Face unlock failed. At 3 in the morning, this stark voice alert echoed from my phone, which lay charging in the living room. Goosebumps sprang up all over my skin. It has been my long-standing practice to charge my phone in the living room overnight. Face unlock failed. The voice came again. To better look after my 80-year-old grandmother, afflicted with mild dementia, I always leave my door slightly open. At first, I suspected a technical glitch with my phone, but that notion was quickly dispelled. The unmistakable sound of human breathing filled the air. It was faint, a mere whisper of sound, yet my ears captured it with crystal clarity. In that moment, my heart thudded wildly. A trail of cold sweat slowly trickled down my back. A clear thought surfaced in my mind. Someone had invaded my sanctuary. Who could it possibly be? A common thief? Or something worse? A burglar, perhaps? Whichever the case, I fervently hoped they would reconsider their intrusion. There was scant cash at home, as all my funds were secured in my Alipay account. The only tangible money was the 100 yuan I had reserved for my grandmother earlier in the day. However, it was apparent he was still tampering with my phone. Silently, I eased out of bed and stealthily crept to the door, cautiously peeking out. In that breath-holding moment, my eyes widened in alarm. I spotted a tall woman looming over the table where my phone was charging. She leaned forward, her waist bent, her body twisted into an odd arc, her neck unnaturally extended. The face unlock failed. Alert resounded repeatedly from my phone. A nervous sweat broke out across my skin. I hadn't anticipated the intruder being a woman. Her hair was wild and unkempt, matted on her shoulders, evidently neglected for some time. On her feet were red embroidered shoes, the style antiquated and rarely seen today. My home is fortified with a security lock and lacks corridor surveillance, yet we had never encountered security issues before. How had this woman entered? I then noticed a slight tremor in the bathroom door and felt a draft. Evidently, the bathroom window had not been closed. It faces a public passageway outside our apartment. The woman had climbed in through that window. My grandmother's room is just next door, and I desperately hoped she wouldn't rise to use the bathroom. But my hopes were dashed. I heard my grandmother stirring from her bed. At once, the woman's neck snapped back, and she turned her head abruptly. Hiding behind the door, I took deep, ragged breaths. In that tense moment, I glimpsed a sharp knife in the woman's hand. I'm merely an ordinary journalist, and my grandmother is well into her 80s. We had no chance against the robust woman confronting us, and my phone was right there before her. The adjacent door creaked open. I heard my grandmother's faltering footsteps. Her vision was poor in the darkness. She had evidently spotted the woman, but she mistook her for me. "You, why are you wearing your street shoes at this hour? Have you just returned from work?" My grandmother's voice echoed in the silence. Desperately, I screamed inside, "Grandma, that's not me. Don't go near her. Grandma, please, go back to your room." The woman moved. Though unseen, her footsteps were audible. At last, my grandmother realized she was not speaking to me. "Who are you? Why are you in my home?" Though afflicted with dementia, my grandmother's clarity was sporadic. Right then, she was startlingly lucid. I clenched my fists, fraught with anxiety. My grandmother was in dire peril. The intruder was armed with a knife. I had to act swiftly to rescue her. Yet, frozen by a cowardly dread, I remained behind the door. Driven by fear, I stayed hidden as my grandmother persistently interrogated the woman, until suddenly her voice cut off. In an instant, the outside world fell eerily silent. My heart seemed on the verge of bursting out of my chest. Then came a stifled groan from my grandmother. A second later, the sickening sound of a blade cutting through flesh filled the air. Tears streamed uncontrollably from my eyes. My body shook as I forcefully covered my mouth. It was clear to me then, my grandmother had been killed. I huddled on the ground, breath held tight. "Don't let her find me. Don't let her find me." I prayed fervently, but it seemed God did not hear. I could sense breathing from above. Raising my eyes, I saw the woman's head sneaking through the door crack. Her smile was sinister, her eyes unnaturally bulging. The bloodshot veins in her eyes resembled spiderwebs. I let out a scream of terror. She raised the knife high and lunged at me. A sharp pain erupted, and then I lost consciousness. I snapped awake. The clock on the wall had just struck 3. Could all that have been a dream? As I mulled over the possibility of a nightmare, that chilling voice echoed again from the living room. Face unlock failed. I jerked upright. This was not a dream. It had all actually happened. Yet, incredibly, I was back. Back to that precise moment at 3 in the morning. Perhaps this was a miraculous second chance. I clenched my fists. I was determined to save both my grandmother and myself. I cast a quick glance at the wall clock. In just 1 minute, my grandmother would be getting up to go to the bathroom. I needed to use this minute wisely, to enter her room and prevent her from stepping out. I carefully peeked out. The woman was still there, neck extended, trying to unlock my phone. I felt compelled to step forward, but my fear held me back. I checked my watch, only 30 seconds left. Gathering every ounce of courage, I moved swiftly into my grandmother's room and secured the door behind me. Grandmother was just about to rise from her bed. She gave me a puzzled look. Before she could utter a word, I rushed to her and covered her mouth. "Don't make a sound," I whispered, my voice breathy with urgency. Taken aback, my grandmother looked at me, bewildered and slightly hurt. There was no time for explanations. I grabbed the phone from her nightstand, intent on calling for help. My heart sank as I found her phone battery dead. "Why isn't it charged?" I muttered under my breath, a mix of panic and frustration seething within. Grandmother looked at me with a pained expression, her hand fluttering dismissively. "I forgot. I just forgot." Her face held the innocent bewilderment of a child. I realized she was having a dementia flare-up. At that moment, I felt completely desperate and powerless. The only way to contact the outside world was through the phone, which was now dead. Thankfully, I had locked the door earlier, giving us enough time to charge the phone and make an emergency call. Suddenly, I heard footsteps. They were strange, almost as if the person was tiptoeing. The woman was approaching our door. Wait, a sudden realization made me shiver. The key to my room's door lock was still in the lock. And this key could also open this door. "Hide!" I urgently motioned for my grandmother to hide under the bed. "The underside of the bed is dirty. I won't go there." Grandmother was completely unaware of the impending danger. My anxiety escalated to near tears. The footsteps halted right outside our door. I heard the sound of the key being withdrawn. We were out of time. In desperation, I tried to push my grandmother under the bed, but she stubbornly resisted. At that moment, I completely broke down. Tears streaming, I crawled under the bed myself. Swamped by immense guilt, I was engulfed in self-reproach. I had committed an unforgivable act. I had abandoned my grandmother and hidden myself. Soon after, I heard the door handle turning. The woman stepped inside. An overwhelming terror clutched at my heart, stifling my breath. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" Grandma echoed the questions haunting my mind. Her voice was abruptly cut off, stifled by a muffled groan. Tears had already plastered across my face. Grandma fell, her body collapsing in a heap. By some cruel twist of fate, her figure just managed to obstruct the gap beneath the bed. Initially, the woman didn't spot me cowering there. But even after she had silenced Grandma, she lingered. She was hunting for me. She knew the house sheltered 2 souls. I shook uncontrollably, gripped by icy dread. The woman roamed the room for what seemed an eternity but appeared not to have detected me. Suddenly, in that breathless silence, I sensed a spine-tingling stare at my back. With trembling hands, I turned around. There, a ghastly face with a grotesque smile pressed against the ground, eyes burning with malice. Her hand snaked under the bed and seized my ankle. In desperation, I kicked wildly at her grasp. Unaffected by pain, she ruthlessly pulled me from my scant refuge under the bed. In the next heartbeat, the knife loomed high again. Pain overwhelmed me, and darkness claimed my consciousness once more. I jerked awake, my breath short and panicked. It was 3 a.m. yet again. Once more, I was thrust back into this repeating moment. And from the living room, the chilling voice echoed. Facial recognition failed. After 2 previous encounters, I'd grown more composed. I recognized that I was trapped in an endless loop, reminiscent of the TV show, The Beginning, I'd watched recently. Each time I respawned, it was always at this moment at 3 a.m. This time, with no hesitation, I darted out, keys in hand. But inevitably, I made a noise. I saw her head slowly tilt up, her eyes locking with mine. Her eyes bulged unnaturally, glaring with exaggerated force. A cold sweat formed on my brow. She surged towards me rapidly. I raced into the room, and as I attempted to shut the door, a withered hand with long, vividly red-painted nails reached in. I slammed the door, her hand retreating as it got pinched. Breathing heavily, I secured the lock. Grandma, bewildered, stared out. "Who is that?" "It's a bad person, a terribly frightening one. We need to play hide and seek now, and the bad person is it." Upon hearing hide and seek, Grandma's face lit up with joy, nodding eagerly. It was the game she cherished most with me. Yet, my demanding job meant these moments were few and far between. "Why not hide under the bed?" I suggested softly, coaxing Grandma. She nodded like a child promised a treat and crawled beneath the bed. Before she disappeared, her face broke into a radiant smile, basking in the game's thrill. To her, this was merely an innocent game. She was blissfully unaware of the looming threat outside, the one that could claim our lives at any moment. "Stay silent, hide well, and tomorrow, I'll take you for ice cream." I quickly plugged in my grandmother's cell phone to charge. In that moment, I deeply regretted opting for such an antiquated model for her. The old-fashioned phones have a glaring flaw. Once the battery depletes, they restart painfully slowly. Suddenly, the sound of furious pounding erupted at the door. "Open the door! Open the door!" The voice of the woman outside was sharp and grating, as if scraping across sandpaper. She repeated the command mechanically. "Xiao Yu, who is speaking?" Grandma asked with curiosity from beneath the bed. "It's a dangerous person. Make sure you stay hidden so she can't find you," I urged with growing anxiety. The door rattled fiercely under the relentless pounding. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a sharp knife slicing through the wooden board. I jumped, my eyes darting to the still black phone screen. "Open the door!" The woman's voice escalated, verging on a scream. The frail wooden door was quickly punctured. A pair of glaring eyes appeared in the hole, strained to the point of showing web-like red veins. "I've already called the police," I declared, my voice thick with fear, hoping to ward her off. "Who are you, and why are you doing this? If it's money you want, I can transfer it to you immediately." Her lips curled into a grotesque smile, part weeping, part mocking. "Money? What good is money? My sweetie can't come back, and you all are to blame. You deserve to die. I will kill every last one of you." I froze, recognizing the name Sweetie. It was then I knew who she was. Her name was Wang Tsuelan, a woman from our community known for her dealings in the underworld. Sweetie was her younger sister, a 20-year-old with intellectual challenges. I hadn't seen Wang Tsuelan for half a month, during which time she had aged as if a decade had passed, masked further by her eerie attire, rendering her initially unrecognizable. Wang Tsuelan's laughter had an eerie tinge as she declared, "You haven't called the police, you're lying. After all, your phone screen is dark." I was taken aback by how sharp Wang Tsuelan's vision was. As the door continued to splinter, in a rush of fear, I heaved the wardrobe against it to barricade the entrance. "Xiao Yu, it's freezing on the floor. Can we end this game now? I don't want to play anymore." Right then, Grandma attempted to wriggle out from under the bed. Anxiety was pushing me to tears. "Just a little longer. Please stay hidden," I begged, my voice breaking with emotion. It seemed that my tears had startled Grandma. Trembling, she lifted her head, wiped away her tears, and then quietly slipped back under the bed. Shortly thereafter, the wardrobe started to shake violently. Luckily, my phone finally booted up. I promptly called the emergency services. Forcing myself to remain composed, I relayed the situation to the police. They urged me to secure a hiding place and promised to be there within 20 minutes. After disconnecting the call, I contacted the security guard downstairs, who assured me he was on his way immediately. Abruptly, the violent shaking of the wardrobe ceased. Nervously, I kept my eyes fixed on the door. Suddenly, from beneath the bed, Grandma inquired, "Who is that figure standing on the balcony?" I turned my head stiffly to see Wang Tsuelan stationed on the balcony. Her face was tightly pressed against the glass, distorting her features grotesquely. Her eyes, however, were wide open and fixed on me. My body trembled as I backed away. I had overlooked the narrow passageway connecting my room's window to Grandma's balcony, especially given its precariousness on the 25th floor. Wang Tsuelan's fingers, coated in crimson nail polish, were poised on the glass door's handle. It was too late. Despairingly, I shut my eyes. My sole hope was that she hadn't seen Grandma under the bed. Yet, in an unforeseen turn, Grandma emerged and approached Wang Tsuelan, cocking her head to ask, "Are you the bad guy? Come back, come back." I cried out in anguish, only to watch as Grandma collapsed before me. My eyes snapped open. I was thrust back to 3 a.m. The living room's voice prompt sounded again, familiar yet eerie. This time, my resolve was firmer than before. I could not allow Wang Tsuelan access from the balcony again. But what could I do? A cold sweat dripped down my forehead. If Wang Tsuelan could traverse the external passage to the balcony, I reasoned that I could as well. I edged towards the door and silently withdrew the key. My movements were deliberate and silent, raising no alarm. The woman remained oblivious, her attention fixed on her phone. Sweat soaked through my shirt. After I removed the key, I gingerly opened the window. A gust of cold air swept in, sending a shiver through me. The passage looked alarmingly narrow, and my mild acrophobia didn't help. My heart hammered in my chest. Hearing Grandma cough, I knew I had to act fast. Summoning every ounce of bravery, I clambered onto the passage. Clutching the walls for support, I inched my way across cautiously. Finally, I made it to the balcony. Grandma was just rising from her bed. She saw me and paused, shocked. I gestured for silence and quickly shut the door. I again coaxed Grandma to hide under the bed, using our game of hide-and-seek as a cover, and then I plugged in my phone. This time, everything seemed to unfold smoothly. Footsteps resonated in the living room, heading towards our room. Though we had been silent, she still approached. My anxiety peaked. I tightly held my phone, dialing the emergency services and security. I had secured the door solidly with the wardrobe. We had ample time. It would take the security guard about 3 minutes to arrive at his fastest. 3 minutes would suffice. Open the door. Wang Tsuelan's sharp voice cut through the silence. I remained quiet, my eyes glued to the phone's timer. 1 more minute. The security would force their way in. Grandma and I would be safe. At last, I heard the resounding thuds of the security guard battering the door. The door collapsed with a heavy thud. I cried out in excitement, "I'm here!" Soon after, the clamor of a scuffle erupted outside. Our complex's security guard was a towering, muscular man. Wang Tsuelan was evidently no match for him. "Miss Lin, I have incapacitated her." My high-strung nerves finally relaxed, and I exhaled a deep, relieving breath. "Grandma, you can come out now. The perpetrator has been restrained." Grandma emerged slowly. As I moved to open the door, Grandma clutched my hand firmly. Her eyes were wide with alarm, and she was sweating profusely as she shook her head at me.
Confused, I stared at her.
"Miss Lin, do you have a rope? I need to secure her." "Of course, I'll fetch it for you," I responded swiftly. Yet this time, Grandma gripped my arms with both hands, her anxiety palpable. Her face trembled uncontrollably, revealing a strength I had never anticipated in her. "Grandma, what's wrong?" Something felt distinctly off. Miss Lin, I can't find the rope, and it seems like she might wake up soon. Could you come out and help me find it? Came the security guard's voice once more. Given Grandma's severe reaction, I decided against opening the door. The rope is in the cabinet by the entrance. You'll see it as soon as you open the door. This rope was a standard emergency escape tool issued to every tenant. Yet, my words met with no response from outside. I repeated, the rope is in the cabinet by the door. Outside, an unnerving silence prevailed. Feeling uneasy, I pressed my ear against the door. Abruptly, a knife pierced through the door panel, narrowly missing my ear. What a pity, wrong spot. Those grotesquely bulging eyes appeared in the new hole. However, the voice outside belonged to the security guard. The realization that Wang Tsuelan could mimic voices darted through my mind. I also remembered a night a month ago. Coming home late from overtime, I had encountered Wang Tsuelan in the neighborhood. She was drunkenly sprawled on a bench, scantily dressed, while children laughingly pelted her with stones. With a frown, I had driven the children away. Just as I was ready to step away, Wang Tsuelan seized my hand. She exhaled a breath laced with alcohol, her eyes glistening. I once belonged to an opera troupe. After it shut down, I had to look after Tian Tian. We were left with no choice but to. I stopped listening. I couldn't bear to hear the life struggles of a woman driven to prostitution. Her opera background explained her uncanny ability to mimic voices. I gripped Grandma's hand, shaking as I urged, hide well. The threat is just outside. But suddenly, Grandma had one of her episodes. She steadfastly refused to hide under the bed. I glanced at my watch. 10 minutes until the police would arrive. I needed to delay for another 10 minutes. It was inevitable that Wang Tsuelan would soon slice through the door with her knife. A sudden idea sparked in my mind. Given our apartment's layout, our balcony was very close to the one below. If I leapt down to seek assistance from the neighbors and then rushed back upstairs, perhaps I could manage in time. Grandma, please, just one last time, can we do this? Shaking, I clutched Grandma's hand, imploring her to hide under the bed. This time, Grandma consented. She gave me a calm, clear-eyed look. Xiao Yu, be careful. After her words, Grandma slid under the bed. I took a deep breath and swung open the balcony door. The wind was bitter and chilling. I was scared, but there was no time left for fear. Grandma was depending on me. I leaped down to the balcony below, but I misjudged my landing, and I clearly heard my ankle snap. Pain shot through me unbearable. Ignoring the agony, I stumbled to the balcony door, pounding for help. Inside the bedroom, people lay on the bed. Moonlight revealed two figures apparently asleep. Help! Someone help me! I pounded desperately on the door. One of them stirred. He turned his head slowly, straining with effort. In that moment, I saw the truth. Their bodies were drenched in blood. I stood frozen in horror. He weakly raised his hand, his lips fluttering slightly. A rush of blood burst from his mouth. His body spasmed briefly, then stilled. He was dead. Wang Tsuelan had murdered my downstairs neighbors before coming up. I knew the reason she wanted us dead. People in our community, particularly the women and elderly, despised Wang Tsuelan. This includes me. Wang Tsuelan resided on the 23rd floor in a rented apartment. Occasionally in the elevator, I'd observe her linked arm in arm with various men. In such instances, I would discreetly move aside, preferring to wait for the next ride even if it was just them in the elevator. Wang Tsuelan would always offer me an awkward yet polite smile. I profoundly despised her profession. I had repeatedly witnessed her being dragged out by her hair by a group of women, who then beat her mercilessly. She would be left with a bloodied face, sometimes with significant amounts of her hair ripped out. The residents seemed accustomed to such scenes and never intervened or called the police. They believed Wang Tsuelan deserved such treatment. I also once saw her escorting Tian Tian to the hospital. Tian Tian, a 20-year-old girl, was notably attractive. She often smiled at me with a naive cheerfulness. However, Tian Tian died a month ago. The The culpable parties were everyone in our complex. A fire erupted a month ago, at 3 in the morning, originating in Wang Tsuelan and Tian Tian's apartment. That night, Wang Tsuelan was away, leaving Tian Tian alone at home. She was bored and began playing with a lighter in the house. Unwittingly, she ignited the curtains. Tian Tian, undoubtedly terrified, had no idea how to handle emergencies. The fire spread swiftly. Downstairs, neighbors smelled intense smoke and alerted the authorities. Within 10 minutes, fire trucks arrived at the entrance of the complex. But they were immediately met with a challenge. The roads within the complex were exceedingly narrow, choked with private vehicles and electric bikes, rendering them impassable for the fire trucks. Firefighters, dripping with sweat, frantically made calls from their truck. It took a painfully long time before anyone grudgingly came down to move their car. The residents meandered down in twos and threes, more concerned with airing grievances than the unfolding disaster. When Wang Tsuelan arrived, the fire had already been put out. Firefighters solemnly placed a charred body before her. Wang Tsuelan descended into madness, her screams and cries rending the air. But Tian Tian, her sister, was beyond saving. Tian Tian died amidst the collective indifference of those around her. Had the firefighters gained access just 5 minutes earlier, Tian Tian might have been saved. That day, I had just returned from a night of overtime. I witnessed the entire tragedy unfold. Wang Tsuelan knelt before me, imploring me to report on the incident. She was determined to expose the real circumstances of Tian Tian's tragic demise to the entire community. She only needed an apology. I supported her up, shaking. "Okay," I replied. "Suyu, look up." Wang Tsuelan's voice came from above. I lifted my gaze, and my pupils contracted instantly. Grandma was pinned by Wang Tsuelan against the balcony railing, a knife held to her throat. I broke down. "Wang Tsuelan, I may be guilty, but my grandmother has done nothing. She has dementia. She knows nothing," I cried out. Wang Tsuelan cocked her head, her features, once fairly attractive, now resembling those of a woman decades older. "Everyone in this complex deserves to die," she shrieked. "You're all responsible for Tian Tian's death." Then Wang Tsuelan turned her sinister smile towards me. "Why didn't you report this? You had promised me. You could have made a difference. You're a journalist. You know how to expose the truth, but you chose silence. I waited a month for an apology I never received. I sought your help, and you shut me out. Now, I've taken matters into my own hands. I'm here to exact Tian Tian's revenge." Wang Tsuelan's laughter echoed, and then, suddenly, her hand made a swift movement. "No." My cry tore through the air. Grandma was dead. She had been savagely murdered. She was all you had left, wasn't she? "That's what Tian Tian was to me," Wang Tsuelan whispered. Just then, police sirens wailed from below. The police had finally arrived. I collapsed to the ground, weeping uncontrollably. I had survived, but Grandma hadn't. Wang Tsuelan seemed to understand that there was no escape left for her. She leaped, like a kite, into the wind. I looked up, our eyes meeting. In that moment, I clearly saw the smile on her face. It was a complex smile, sinister yet liberating. These emotions played across her face as the police made their way upstairs. A policewoman stripped off her uniform and wrapped it around me. She embraced me tightly, whispering, "Don't be scared, child. We're sorry, child. We got here too late." I couldn't contain it any longer and began to weep silently. Wang Tsuelan was right. As a journalist, I understand how to disseminate this story for maximum impact. True to my role, I penned the article the very next day. When I handed it over to my supervisor for review, he offhandedly commented, "Sue, you've been with us as an intern for quite some time now, haven't you?" I was momentarily paralyzed. Among the 4 interns who had started alongside me, my credentials were the most unremarkable. "Normally, we wouldn't choose you, but I've decided to give you an opportunity," he declared. "Sue, you're a smart person. You discern which reports should be made public and which should remain undisclosed. My father-in-law resides in this community, and I would prefer he not endure any further online vitriol. He explained, smiling gently. Once I returned home, I ripped the report to shreds.
Iowe Kuilan Wing an apology.
But I desperately need this job. Only a formal role as a journalist can provide for my grandmother and me. While I can bear a lifetime of poverty, my 80-year-old grandmother cannot. That day, Chui Lan Wang appeared at my door, her expression haggard, her demeanor that of someone unhinged. Upon seeing me, she clutched at my hand with fervor, pleading, "Journalist Su Xiaoyu, help me, please, broadcast this story, inform society." But ultimately, I let her hand slip away. "I'm sorry, Sister Chui Lan," I murmured as I shut the door. Shortly thereafter, her anguished sobs echoed from outside, a sound that deeply troubled me. The cycle appears to have broken, because I lived. But what if I die again? I slipped past the police, took the elevator, and ascended to the 23rd floor. That was Chui Lan Wang's residence. Her apartment had been refurbished. The incident was entirely suppressed. I thought I glimpsed a sweet figure through the window, the girl with the foolish smile aimed at me. My heart was unbearably heavy. "Suyu, what are you doing?" The policewoman from before stood below, her shouts filled with urgency. I shut my eyes. I must save Grandma. I plunged from the 23rd floor. I was betting everything. Upon opening my eyes, indeed, my gamble had succeeded. I found myself back at 3 in the morning. I was determined to save Grandma. This time I wouldn't hide. From outside, the voice said, facial recognition failed.
He stepped outside, Wing Kuilan.
Wang Chui Lan slowly turned, her eyes widening in shock as she saw me. She then smiled slightly, raised a knife, and lunged at me.
Wing Kuilan, I'm sorry, uttered, trembling.
She halted, staring blankly at me. I could have exposed the truth about Tian Tian's death to the world, but I chose not to. I owe Tian Tian an apology, and I owe you one too. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I spoke. Tears traced down Wang Chui Lan's face as well. Her face twitched uncontrollably, and the hand that gripped the knife quivered. Wang Chui Lan put the knife down. "I'll make sure the story is told, and that everyone in this neighborhood apologizes to Tian Tian." I knelt before her, imploring her to spare both my grandmother and me.
Wing Kuilan revealed a ghastly smile.
Initially, I merely wanted an apology for my sister. I only required an apology, not compensation. I just needed them to admit their fault. But you denied me. Consequently, I reconsidered. I decided you should also know the torment of losing someone indispensable. My entire body shook. My words had failed to alter Wang Chui Lan's resolve. The blade was now poised at my throat. I gazed into Wang Chui Lan's eyes, filled with both hatred and despair. They were the eyes of a mother. Could it be that once again, nothing could alter this course? I shut my eyes, but the anticipated pain never came, because my grandmother had stepped in front of me. The knife had pierced her chest. "Grandma! Grandma!" I screamed helplessly, overwhelmed by grief. Why, oh why, did my grandmother have to awaken at this moment? "Xiaoyu," my grandmother said weakly, turning to face me. I quickly wrapped my arms around her. "Xiaoyu, don't get caught in the cycle again." Her hand clutched mine, her voice quivering as she spoke. Her words sent a chill through me. Grandmother's narrative. I have a granddaughter named Suyu, who has been dependent on me since her childhood. I told her parents perished in a car accident when she was just 3, but that was a fabrication. Xiaoyu isn't my biological granddaughter. She is a child I found. After my husband died early and my daughter passed away from illness, it has been only Xiaoyu and me. She is extraordinary, understanding, and diligent. She was accepted into a prestigious 985 university and became a journalist. I dearly wish I could spend more time with her, but I am aging too quickly. Gradually, I've started forgetting things. Xiaoyu took me to a doctor who diagnosed me with Alzheimer's. Gradually, I will forget everything, including Xiaoyu. This fear is greater than any other. I cannot forget Xiaoyu. Therefore, I constantly revisit our photos, reminding myself, this is Xiaoyu. She is my beloved granddaughter. Tonight, while stepping out to use the bathroom, I saw a woman. Initially, I thought she was Xiaoyu, but she wasn't. She charged at me and drove a knife into my chest. As I fell, I turned to look toward Xiaoyu's room. Thankfully, she hadn't come out. But, unexpectedly, I did not die. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to this moment. This time, I recognized the woman as Wang Chuilan. I don't know her motives, but I am clear that my priority is to protect Xiaoyu. Neither of us is capable of confronting this woman. The only thing I could do for her was buy time. Xiaoyu, Grandma can't be there to see you in your wedding dress. I'm sorry, but ensuring your survival is paramount. As long as I can attract Wang Chuilan's attention, letting her kill me first, it increases Xiaoyu's chances of survival. However, I hadn't realized Xiaoyu too had entered the cycle. She, just as desperately, was trying to ensure my survival. But it's clear, if we need enough time, only one of us can make it. So I pretended to have dementia, knowing Xiaoyu would want me to hide. But I couldn't. I had to stand in front of my granddaughter, protecting her at all costs. Xiaoyu was oblivious to the fact that I had entered the cycle before her. The only path to ending the cycle was to ensure Xiaoyu's survival. That time, I fell right in front of Xiaoyu. She took refuge under the bed. With my dwindling strength, I covered her beneath the bed. Survive, Xiaoyu. Su Yu's perspective. The moment I heard Grandma's words, everything clicked. Grandma too was caught in the cycle. She wasn't sick. She was intentionally drawing Wang Chuilan's attention. Each instance, she risked her fragile body to protect me, her cowardly grandchild. She had been in the cycle longer than I had, each time risking her life to secure a future for me. Police sirens blared downstairs. Wang Chuilan stared out the window blankly, murmuring, "Tian Tian, sister is coming to you." She walked step by step to the window and then leaped out. I clung to Grandma's hand, crying in despair. Xiaoyu, my only regret is not being able to see you in a wedding dress. Grandma's face rapidly paled, but she mustered a faint smile. Grandma, please don't die. I held Grandma tightly, sobbing so hard I was gasping for air. Memories of our times together flooded back, of how I was often bullied in school for lacking parents. They taunted me as the child with no parents, cornering me in an alley after school to pelt me with stones. Grandma, frail yet determined, would repeatedly chase those kids away. She reassured me, "Xiaoyu, even if you don't have parents, you have me. As long as I'm alive, I will always protect you." In middle school, when girls mocked my unfashionable clothes, I tearfully pleaded with Grandma to buy me clothes from a department store. Unbeknownst to me, to buy those clothes, Grandma spent 2 months picking up trash. Yet, she never spoke of her struggles, simply handing me the clothes with a smile. "Xiaoyu, whatever others have, I will strive to provide for you." My tears flowed ceaselessly. Grandma lived up to her word. She truly exhausted all her efforts to protect me. "Promise me, don't re-enter the cycle." "It's useless, you can't persuade her," Grandma said with effort. "My Xiaoyu is so outstanding, I know. You've worked hard, earned a degree from a prestigious university, and secured a good job. I'm truly happy for you. Your life is long ahead. I can't be your burden. Promise me." With her final ounce of strength, Grandma squeezed my hand. The next moment, her grip loosened, and her hand fell gently. She closed her eyes, forever ceasing to breathe. She could no longer hold my hand. Like a child, I sobbed uncontrollably, "Grandma, Grandma." At that moment, police and doctors burst in. The cycle appeared to be completely broken. As they carried my grandmother away, a policewoman compassionately wrapped a jacket around me. Suddenly, I seized her hand. "If you knew the most important person to you was going to die and that the outcome was unchangeable, would you still try to save them?" Initially startled, the policewoman then firmly nodded. "Yes, even for the merest chance."
He smiled daher.
With resolve, I turned, approached the window, and leaped out once again. This situation started with me. It should also end with me. Even for the slightest chance, I was determined to try. Grandma, I'm coming to rescue you. Extra episode. I returned once again to 3 o'clock in the morning. Facial recognition failed. This time I wouldn't flee.
Wing Kuilan.
I exited the room and calmly uttered her name. Wang Chuilan jerked her head around. Her eyes, swollen and bloodshot, were wide as she gazed at me. Wang Chuilan, I know what you're searching for. The unpublished draft is right here on my phone. Wang Chuilan's face displayed intense emotional fluctuations. Her cheeks shook uncontrollably. You're seeking revenge. You want me to endure the anguish of losing someone dear. You hope to kill us to draw societal attention, to expose the truth. Wang Chuilan, you've already killed a family downstairs. Now, please stop. I failed you, and I know apologies are too late. But please, give me one more chance. I said this through tears, my body quaking. Suddenly, my grandmother rushed from the room and clutched my hand. Xiaoyu, why did you return? I didn't answer my grandmother and moved toward Wang Chuilan. She backed away, her hand trembling as she raised the knife. I originally wanted nothing more than an apology. Wang Chuilan, hand me the phone, and I'll upload the draft online right now, revealing the truth to everyone. Can you trust me once again? With tears streaming down my face, I knelt before Wang Chuilan and deeply bowed my head. Wang Chuilan was gasping for air. Her face contorted into a grimace worse than tears as she clutched at my hair. Suyu, why should I trust you again, huh? What reason do I have? The knife blade pressed against my neck. Once again, I was engulfed by the fear of imminent death. Yet my grandmother, fully aware of her impending fate, bravely interposed herself in front of me again and again. This old lady, usually so timid that she'd scream at the sight of a cockroach.
Kuilan.
Grandmother rushed forward and grabbed Wang Chuilan's knife. Blood began to drip from her palm. Wang Chuilan, let Xiaoyu go. Grandma! I grabbed my grandmother's hand quickly. It was soaked with blood. Wang Chuilan stared at us for a long moment. Finally, she let go of the knife and burst into loud sobs. The wail of police sirens began from below. I picked up my phone and sent the long-held draft from my drafts folder. Sister Chuilan, soon, everyone will know the truth about Tian Tian. Wang Chuilan looked up at me, her eyes tired. She stumbled to the window, and by the time I moved to stop her, it was too late. Wang Chuilan's silhouette disappeared from the window. The police and doctors stormed in. The cycle was broken. I clung to my grandmother, sobbing uncontrollably like a child.